So this video is going to be about how to loot bosses properly in Maplestory. I'm sure some of you have done some party bossing and you hear things like blink for loot or turn your pet loot off. What does any of that mean, right? So by the end of this video, you're going to have a better understanding of what to loot in bosses, how to loot properly, how to loot properly in a party, whether it's with your friends or with random people you met on the game. So the first and most important thing that you have to understand when bossing in Maplestory is bosses drop two different types of items that are either shared or not shared. This can also be referred to as instance loot and non-instance loot. Instance loot is items that are not shared between your party members, and non-instance loot is items that are shared between your party members. The reason this is important is because sometimes the shared loot that everybody can take, you don't know how to either split it up or you don't know who gets it. And the items that are not shared, your pet can automatically pick them up and you don't have to manually loot them, and nobody else in the room can see the items that are on the floor that are only for you. So here's an example of my pet picking up items that are only for me. So you saw there how my character's pets automatically picked up the lotus cores. I didn't have to stop and manually pick it up. That's an example of not shared loot or instance loot. Instance loot is not really a concern. All you have to do is make sure that your pet is looting and it'll pick up all the items that are only belonging to you. Now, the point of contention is, how do I determine who gets the not shared loot? How do I determine who gets the shared loot or the non-instance loot? There are many different ways of determining who gets the shared loot or the non-instance loot. The most common way that people determine who gets the shared loot is by doing something called blinking. So what is blinking exactly? Blinking is when you use the 5th job common skill called blink, and I will show you what that is. It's this skill right here. If you go in the V matrix, there's a skill called blink. You can craft it. Any class in the whole game can obtain this skill called blink. And what does it do? It teleports you to a random location on the map. So if I were to use blink right here, I'm on the right side of the map. Boom. I got teleported up here. Random spot. What people do with blink when it comes to bossing is they will all line up to a side of the wall and everybody presses blink once. And when you press blink, it'll teleport you to a random location on the map, right? And whoever is furthest to the other side gets the loot. They get the shared loot all for themselves. This is the tradition. This is the standard for party bossing in Maplestory. But I do want to make it clear that not every single party functions this way. Some parties will choose to have a loot rotation. Like, let's say you're running with your friends and the first week it's your loot. That means no matter what drops, you get everything on that first week. The second week when you run, it's the next person's loot, and so on. Sometimes people choose to blink whoever's closest to the box in the middle. The key to this is communication. You need to make sure that everybody is on the same page. But standing on the left wall and blinking and seeing whoever could go furthest to the right is, from my experience and from everybody I know, is the standard on Maplestory. Most people do that. So when most people say we're going to quote unquote blink for loot, it means that at the end of the boss, everybody's going to line up on the left, press blink, and whoever gets furthest to the right wins and gets the loot. Now, why do people do this? People do this because it is a non-biased way of determining who gets the loot. The blink is out of everybody's control and it's completely up to RNG on who gets it. And the reason why people line up on the wall, it makes it easier to determine who actually won, because everybody is pushed all the way against the wall. If, for example, everybody was lined up in the middle, you can make an argument and say, oh, you weren't perfectly lined up in the middle. But when everybody's on the wall on the left, that means everybody is perfectly lined up and at the exact same starting point. So as you can see in this clip, the first person blinks and he only lands over here. But when I blink over here. So therefore, I won the blink because I went further to the right than him and I would be getting the loot. Now, this is just an example. I end up giving him the loot just because I don't need it. Technically, I won the blink, so therefore the loot would be mine. But I do end up just giving it to him because I don't need it. So that's how blinking works. So now that we know how blinking works, the next point of this conversation is who gets to blink and who doesn't get to blink. I've seen a lot of different takes on this and what determines your eligibility to blink or not. I want to bring it back to communication. All of this comes down to communication with your party. If you are running with random people or you are running with your friends, please make sure that you know how you are going to loot the box. I have seen countless times so many people confused, so many people stealing each other's items because there was no clarity in how they were going to loot the items. So you can see over here, you can see Duky, Lina, and Urdu are both green dots, right? So what are these dots, right? There are 3 different colored dots that you will see when you are party bossing: green, blue, or red. Green means that you did 10% or more of the boss's entire HP, so you are contributing a meaningful amount to the boss. Blue means that you did between 5 and 10% of the boss's HP. So green and blue dots are eligible for loot. When the box breaks at the end, loot will show up for them because they did at bare minimum 5% of the boss's max HP. Red dot means you did less than 5% of the boss's HP, which means that if you get to the loot room at the end, nothing will drop for you at all. So there's no point of blinking, there's no point of anything because nothing will drop. The reason I bring this up is because a lot of people believe that blue dots should not be given loot. So this comes down to communication again. All of this boils down to whether you want to give your blue dot the loot or not. Now, the standard for endgame bossing is yes, even if you are a blue dot, you are still eligible for loot and you should still blink and you can still get everything. But sometimes some parties want to make it so that only green dots get loot. Personally, I don't think that's fair. I think if you are at least a blue dot, you should be eligible for loot. But I want to tell you guys that if you encounter these types of parties, I personally wouldn't bother being in it, even if I'm a blue dot and they say, oh, you can't get loot. I don't think that's fair. I wouldn't be comfortable in a party like that. But keep in mind that some parties do operate that way. So you need to make it absolutely clear whether blue dots get loot or not. Why do I keep talking about running with random people? So a lot of people on this game don't have a big community to run with. They don't have a full friend group to run bosses with, right? So what they do is they open the boss tab and they click on this recruit party button and they join random parties that people are advertising for, basically. So in this recruit party tab, I could either create my own party and look for people to join mine, or I could join random people. So for example, this guy Sebastian says description duo blink. So he's looking for one other person, and blink means that you are going to be blinking for loot. So he's making it very clear that when they get to the loot room, you are going to be blinking for loot. It's not like it's his loot only. It's not like he doesn't need the book or whatever drops, right? So if I were to join this party, I would know that I would need to be blinking at the end. And to be extra safe, I would ask him, hey, if I blue dot, can I still loot? And if he says no, then so be it. Don't party with him then if you're not comfortable with that. But if he says yes, then sure, go ahead. Again, the key to this is communication. Whenever you join a party, especially a random fill party where you're just joining anybody, be very communicative. Tell them, if I blue dot, am I going to get loot? Are we going to blink for loot? What's happening here? You have to be very open and ask these questions. Another thing to party bossing is, let's say you're the party leader, right? If you open the party tab and you create a party and you're in a party full of people, there's this settings button right here and you could turn on party leader loot. So what this means, if you press confirm, you can see in the chat here, it says the party's item pickup rights change to party leader. This means that no matter what drops, only the party leader can loot it. Even if people in your party are standing on top of the items and it's their items only, it's instance loot, they can't loot it. They can't loot anything. This completely restricts looting from anybody in the party. So when I party personally, I always have party leader on, and whoever wins the blink, I give them party leader so that they can get all of their loot, and there is absolutely zero risk of anybody stealing anything. Because if you don't have party leader loot on, there is a risk of somebody in your party looting your stuff. The shared items that everybody could see, there is a risk that somebody just takes it. But if you have party leader loot on, they will never take it, no matter what. And whoever wins the blink, you just give them party leader. You just right click their name, transfer party leader, and that's it. And they will get all their loot, and you don't have to worry about people stealing any shared loot at all. So please always try and turn party leader loot on. Even if you're running with friends, I've seen accidents happen all the time, and it breaks up friend groups, and it's horrible. So just play it safe. Always have party leader loot on. It's not worth the risk. It's not that deep. If some of your friends say, oh, you don't trust me, blah, blah, blah. It's really not that deep. Just turn it on. It's a surefire way, 100% guaranteed way that whoever deserves the loot, whoever wins the blink, gets what they deserve. Now, for some of you guys who are not doing super high tier bosses, let me explain to you where this entire conversation generally comes from. So there are these items in the game called pitched boss set items. You see it on the top right, pitched boss set. These items are some of the strongest items in the whole game, but these items are all shared loot. So if you are running in a party and it drops, anybody can just walk up to it and take it unless you have party leader loot on, obviously, right? And this is what people are blinking for. They're blinking for these pitch boss items generally. So make sure that everybody's on the same page, whether you're blinking or you're doing a loot rotation or whatever it is, or if you're a blue dot and they say you can't get loot, make sure that you know that, and absolutely make sure that you have party leader loot on if you are the party leader, and just transfer the party leader to whoever won the blink so that they can guaranteed get their loot. Now, one last thing that I want to tell you guys is how drop gear affects drops on this game. So we cleared Lotus here, right? And you'll see that I will be swapping to my drop gear. So what this means is I have a separate set of accessories, rings, pendants, face, eye, and earring, that have item drop rate plus 20% on it. And the reason why I switched to these items is because it increases the likelihood of getting rare drops from the boss. So you can see I have 200% drop gear from my gear total, which means 10 lines of this item drop rate 20% total across my gear, which is the max from gear. There are other things to increase your drop rate as well, like your familiar or having holy symbol out, or popping a wealth acquisition potion. This increases by 20%, and popping a Legion luck coupon, which is another 50% on top of that. Basically, I have all of these multipliers that are increasing the likelihood of me getting something. Because I have max drop rate, I break the box. And even if you're not hitting the box, you should still switch to your full drop gear. Even if you're not hitting it, you don't have to hit the box at all. But as long as you are in the party and you have all of your drop gear on, your drop gear still gets applied to the loot. But because I have the highest drop gear, I want to break the box because that's the best for everybody. The reason you want to keep your drop gear on is because it affects ring boxes. Ring boxes are items that are instants and only you can see if they drop, and they have a chance of giving you a really powerful ring, like a ring of restraint or a weapon jump ring or a continuous ring or something like that. So you really always want to make sure that you have your drop gear on because it'll affect your loot as well, even if you're not hitting the box. So for me, I break the box. And let's go over what's shared and what's not shared, right? So this Absol box that dropped, this is a not shared item. So I have no problem looting it whatsoever. My pet will just take it. These Lotus cores over here are not shared, for example. So I can just loot them with my pet. I don't have to worry about blinking. I don't have to worry about any of that. But these cubes, the flames, the honor, the white pot, MVP, these are all shared items. So this is what you would be blinking for, to see who could get all of those items. And if a Berserk were to drop, which is like the biggest drop from this boss, that would be especially important to blink for because we need to 100% determine who gets it and nobody's screwing each other over. Since I have party leader, if the Berserk were to drop, I would just transfer party leader to Urdu if he were to win the blink, and then he would be able to get it. Now, again, I want to make it absolutely clear that none of this is set in stone. This is just the traditional way to loot in Maplestory. Blinking, blue dot, green dot, party leader loot rotations. This is just the standard. You can loot however you want as long as the party is all on the same page. Just making that absolutely clear. Make sure that everybody on the party is the same page. Keep in mind that most people are going to say blink for loot, and now you know what blinking for loot means, and you know what instance and non-instance loot is like, and you know to swap to your drop gear. It's very important. One last thing that is very, very important is for whoever is breaking the box at the end, always type R question mark. So R question mark means you're asking the party if they're all ready, because sometimes people take a long time to swap to their drop gear, whether they're lagging or they're just slow at swapping or something like that. You want to always make sure everybody is ready before you break the box. So I type R question mark, he types R, that means we're both ready, so it's time to break the box. So hopefully this video gave you a better understanding on looting boss drops in Maplestory, whether it's blinking or whether you're a blue dot or whether you're going to do a loot rotation, whatever it is. Please make sure that you communicate with your party and you're all on the same page. But this is just the standard in current day Maplestory. Most people blink for loot, and it's very important for you guys to know that so you don't get screwed over. If you enjoyed this video, please consider showing it some support, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much to my goats, Blazefire, Shooms, Uju, Shagad, Ravi Espa, Grim 4K, Koga, Pabo, Piconir, Jesse, and Niles. I appreciate you guys so much.